Welcome back to our prenatal yoga teacher training. And so today's lesson, we're going to do our seated poses. So I would include the seated poses after you've done all your standing poses because prenatal women do not like to go up and down. So once you finished all your standing poses, then you can move to seated poses. Or you start with seated poses at the beginning and then you move to standing poses and then maybe you do supine poses. I recommend to do seated meditation, pranayama, standing poses, pelvic floor exercises, and then straight seated poses. Okay, so let's begin with Sukhasana. So Sukhasana is just a seated meditation pose. That's something that you do at the beginning of class, but you can also, after they do all their standing poses, maybe you want to give them a little break in Sukhasana. And for prenatal women, Sukhasana is sometimes Sukhasana is easy for some women. Some women have tighter hips and maybe they need to sit on a bolster, pillow, or blanket. So the way you can help them with props for Sukhasana is sitting on a bolster, such as so, and having their pelvis slightly tilted forward. Okay, as you can see, my spine is nice and long versus maybe if they sit completely on the floor, their spine may be rounded. Okay, if that's the case, then they need a prop. This pose is also okay for pelvic floor exercises. So you can use this pose for pelvic floor exercises as well. The next one is seated bound angle pose, Baddha Konasana. So this one's really good for the inner thighs and hips. Okay, so you will bring the soles of the feet together, knees wide, and the moms can adjust the heels close or further away from their body depending on what they're feeling that day. So you can just say mama's choice, yogi's choice. And if this pose is too much for some of them, or maybe they want to make it more of a yin pose where they can stay a little bit longer, you can do soles of the feet together and then have a bolster and have them place their third eye on the bolster and rest there. Okay, if that feels nice, they can stay like that. Or if they need a little bit more support underneath the knees, they can bring bolsters to the outside of the knees. And that's nice there. Okay, and then they can add a little stretch if they feel like it. If not, they can just stay upright. The next pose I want to show you is Paschimottanasana. So that's seated forward fold. For prenatal women, their legs will be wider. So instead of doing legs together, as some classes will teach in yoga, you'll have the legs wider. You can also use the bolster here. They can place their third eye here. This pose is really good to open up the hamstrings, lower back. Okay, another way that they can do it, they can put the bolsters underneath their knees and then forward fold. Okay, but make sure that they have enough space for baby. Another way that they can do it, they can use their strap if they can't quite touch the toes, wrapping the strap around the soles of the feet. Inhale, lifting up, and then exhale, folding. The next pose is Janu Shirshasana. That is kind of like the tree pose, also a good hamstring stretch. They'll bend one leg like tree pose, and then their forward fold. They can fold with the strap as well, placing the strap on the ball of the foot. That's a good one. Another one that I like to do, the legs are kind of similar, but instead of having that right leg right in front of the hip, you're going to open it wide into like a V. So one leg is doing tree pose, the other one is in a half V. But instead of using same arm as leg, you're going to switch the arms, left hand opposite to right foot, have the moms look up to extend the spine. As I exhale, they fold. This one is so bomb for the lower back. Okay, very good for the lower back. Okay, Parsva Sukhasana, seated side stretch. This is part of the warm-up poses. If you want to do another side stretch as a moms want to, feel free. All they have to do is come into seated Sukhasana, easy pose, meditation pose, and then side bend. Okay, they can also side bend with a block. Okay, if they need extra support. That's a good seated pose. Let me just do the other side just so I'm even. Okay, and then let's see, seated wide-legged forward fold. Upabhisha Konasana. This one's really good for the inner thighs. So legs will be in a V. You can have your blocks and you can fold just like so. Okay, make sure the thigh bones are rotating up as the pelvis is tilting forward. You can use your blocks. You can also use the bolster just like we did and seated forward fold. Okay, this one's really good for the inner thighs. And inner thigh stretch is also great for the knees. So if they're feeling some knee issues, this one's great for that one. Okay, for knee issues. All right, and then open-ended twist, Ardha Matsyendrasana. So as you know from my other modules in the prenatal teacher training, you do not do any closed twists for prenatal women. All the twists are nice and open. What I mean by open is that the shoulders are on top of the hips, okay, or they're just nice and open to where baby's facing out. So what this might look like is this kind of twist, maybe keeping one leg out and then legs are far apart. You're going to inhale, reach the arm up, and exhale, come to the inside of the thigh and twist open. Okay, versus the close-ended twist where the heart and tummy is twisted the opposite direction of the hips. So you don't want to do any pose like that for prenatal women, okay, because that does not honor baby's space. Okay, it's kind of too much on the tummy here, and it's also kind of hard to breathe. The next one is Gomukhasana. This pose is a 2-for-1 pose. It's excellent for the outer hips. If they're feeling lower back pain, tight hips, Gomukhasana is really good. And you also even get to get an arm stretch there. Okay, shoulder stretch and arm stretch. So to get into Gomukhasana, I like to come from all fours. You'll have the mamas come from all fours. Then also have a block ready, okay? Because Gomukhasana is one of those poses that make you feel super cooped up. So you're gonna cross the thigh bones. You're gonna make space to where your buns can land onto the block. Okay, some moms will need the block, some moms will not. So your legs are kind of like eagle. You're sitting on top of the blocks and they should feel this in their outer hips already. Okay, then you're going to add the arms. If they can't quite touch the fingertips back there, they're going to grab the strap. You're going to inhale, lift up, and then as you exhale, you're going to fold. Okay, they're definitely going to feel that in their outer hips and shoulders. Okay, and if the shoulders is too complicated for this pose, you'll just fold just like so. Okay, and then you should feel the stretch on the outer hips. All right, and then the next hip pose. So these are all the poses that you can tie in towards the end, all the hip opening poses. You'll tie in towards the end before you do all your restorative poses, okay? So the next pose, we're gonna come into pigeon. So pigeon is all good for the moms. They can either come into pigeon from three-legged dog, so maybe lifting left leg up, exhale, left shin almost parallel, kind of parallel to the top of the mat. That's one way to get into it. Or you can just have them come into all fours and then shimmy that shin forward. Now, when they come into pigeon pose, it'll be kind of strange because they'll have baby here. So you'll have them rest their forearms on a bolster. Forearms on a bolster, or they can lay on the bolster if that feels okay and it's enough room for baby. Or you can have forearms on a block. Okay, if that's okay for them, coming into pigeon pose. The last hip pose I'll show you is double pigeon, or sometimes they call it fire log pose. So the shins will be stacked on top of one another. So opposite ankle to knee. Now, a lot of your students will have a huge amount of space here. So you'll fold the blanket and have the moms place the blanket underneath the knees. This one's a big hip opener. They can fold if that feels good. Have the moms flex the feet if they need more sensation. If not, they can just kind of relax the feet. Another way to do double pigeon is just placing the shin on top of a bolster like so, and then folding over the shin. So the goal of this is to have a hip stretch. So anyway, if they can feel it here, if they can feel it through double pigeon, or if they feel it through pigeon, normal pigeon, all good. And that is all of our seated poses that you can incorporate into your prenatal yoga class. There's tons of other seated poses that you can incorporate into your prenatal class, but these ones are the basics and should be okay for every class. If you have one that you'd like to incorporate and you're not quite sure how to add it in or if it's okay, feel free to leave a comment, email me, let me know, and I'll give you some tips on if the pose is going to be okay for the moms. Okay, so I think that is it for this section. The next section, we'll talk about our restorative poses. That section will need a lot of our same props, but it may take some more time to set up. Okay, so I will see you in the next video. Stay tuned and let me know if you have any questions.